Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever really considered that the greatest lie ever told wasn't whispered by an enemy, but by your own mind in a desperate attempt to keep you safe? You see, we often view our brains as our most loyal allies, the logical captains of our ship, navigating us toward success. But beneath the surface of your conscious thought, there is an architect at work, the architect of deception. This primal part of your psyche, it doesn't actually care about your happiness, your dreams, or your ultimate fulfillment. It cares about one thing, and one thing only: that you are still breathing when the sun rises tomorrow. To your biological hardware, comfort is survival. And risk? Well, risk is death. This ancient machinery was forged on the dangerous plains of the savannah, where a rustle in the tall grass meant a predator, and being cast out of the tribe meant certain demise. But today, the savannah is gone. The tigers have vanished. Yet, the machinery remains, firing with that same intensity. It treats a public speaking engagement like a lethal threat, and perceives a bold career change as a leaf off a jagged cliff. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a modern world while running a prehistoric operating system. Your mind isn't trying to make you great. It's trying to keep you small. Because in the eyes of evolution,
Consider, for a moment, the dreams you have quietly buried. Perhaps it was a career change that felt too risky, a creative pursuit that felt too vulnerable, or even a relationship that required a level of honesty you just weren't ready to face. Why did you let them wither? Most likely, it was to avoid the sting of embarrassment, or that terrifying chill of the unknown. Right? We often choose the dull, chronic ache of stagnation over the sharp, temporary pain of growth, because our brain perceives the familiar as survivable and the unknown as lethal. We are trading our infinite potential for a false sense of security. We live in a state of quiet desperation, convincing ourselves that someday is a legitimate date on the calendar. But ladies and gentlemen, someday is the most dangerous word in the human vocabulary. It is the velvet lining of your cage. We must ask ourselves, what is the true cost of this safety? Is a life lived strictly within the safe zone actually a life at all? Or is it merely a long, slow withdrawal from the world? With an air of mystery, the tragedy of the golden cage, you see, is that the door is never actually locked. However, the architect of deception has one final trick to ensure you never even try to turn the handle. To understand why we stay paralyzed, even when the exit is in plain sight, we have to look at the specific way your brain distorts your perception of time and consequence. Because
However, even when we understand this tax, our mind has one final, sophisticated defense mechanism to keep us from paying it. It's a way of rationalizing our stagnation so effectively that we begin to mistake our paralysis for, patience. To see through this final illusion, we have to look at the specific narrative your ego constructs to keep you from ever crossing that toll booth. Final realization. Because the greatest lie your brain tells you isn't that you're in danger. It's that you aren't ready yet. Ladies and gentlemen, if we accept that our brain is a well-meaning but misguided architect of our stagnation, then we must become the engineers of our own liberation. Thoughtfully, to dismantle the fortress of false safety, you see, we need more than just awareness.
We need a blueprint for rewiring. Softly. This is not a simple to-do list. No, it is a series of sacred rituals designed to reclaim your agency from the primal parts of your mind. The quiet places. The quiet places. The first step in this blueprint is what psychologists call cognitive labeling. Contemplative. You know, when that cold shiver of hesitation runs down your spine as you contemplate a new path, do not let it settle as an objective truth. Firmly, speak to it. Measured. Consciously state to yourself, this is my survival brain seeking safety, not my intuition sensing danger. Wisely. There is a profound power you see in the simple act of naming. By labeling the sensation, you move the experience from the reactive amygdala to the analytical prefrontal cortex. You are essentially telling your brain that while you hear its warning, you are no longer governed by its ancient fears. Reflective. The second ritual is the practice of voluntary discomfort. Your brain loves the predictable because the predictable is easy to calculate. To break the spell of the safe lie, you must prove to your nervous system, actually prove it, that you can survive the unknown. Make one small choice daily that deliberately interrupts your routine. Just sit in a different chair, take a new route home, or strike up a conversation that feels slightly outside your social grace. These are not just habits, they are small tremors.
However, even as we begin to master these tools, a new and more subtle shadow often emerges. Because the brain, realizing it is losing its grip on your control, will deploy its most devastating weapon yet. It is a psychological phenomenon that turns our very progress against us, making us feel like imposters in the very life we worked so hard to build. To understand why your greatest breakthrough is often followed by your greatest moment of doubt, we have to look at the hidden mechanism of the upper limit problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we often interpret this internal resistance as a sign that we have gone too far. That we are overreaching, or that we are somehow imposters in our own success. But in reality, that psychological friction is the most honest feedback your biology can provide. It is actually the sound of your old identity stretching to accommodate a larger life. When you feel that sudden urge to retreat, to play small, or to doubt your worthiness just as things are going well, you see, you are standing at the sacred threshold of the person you are becoming. Think of your fear, not as a stop sign, but as a level-up notification from the universe. Your brain, in its ancient and protective wisdom, is still trying to keep you safe within the well-lit caves of the known. But you are no longer a creature defined solely by survival, right? You are a creature defined by evolution. To step into your expansive self, you must learn to acknowledge that inner voice of caution